Oh, Meghan Markle. The Duchess of Sussex, the patron saint of curated lighting, mismatched mugs, and now, yes, really, live protein on baked goods. If you missed it, let me set the scene. Meghan, ever the lifestyle brand in human form, decided to bless Instagram with a tray of what she swears up and down are shortbread cookies. Spoiler alert, they're about as close to real shortbread as a flip-flop is to a croissant. But this isn't just a sad bake sale from the seventh circle of hell. This is a full-blown culinary horror show, complete with a surprise guest star, a worm. Not just any worm, mind you. An inchworm, caught mid-escape, wriggling for its life on her artisanal dirt discs. That's right. In Meghan's very own, painstakingly filtered Instagram story, you can see a tiny green inchworm plotting its jailbreak from the plate. The poor thing looked like it had just been cast in an A24 horror film and was desperate to audition for the sequel. Anywhere but Meghan's kitchen. And honestly, who can blame it? Because if there's one thing Meghan Markle gives off, it's the vibe of someone who picks herbs from the garden without so much as a sideways glance for bugs, then smirks about the freshness. She probably thinks it's rustic, you know? Victorian era, but with worse hygiene and better PR. The detail is almost poetic. Meghan's entire brand is built on relentless attention to detail, except, apparently, when it comes to things like, say, food safety. Forget FDA guidelines. Meghan's kitchen feels more like a cross between an Etsy pop-up and a compost heap. The now infamous cookies featured not just jam and flour sprinkles, which, if we're honest, already looked a little too much like a Pinterest fever dream come to life, but also this lively inchworm, possibly an unpaid intern. Watching the footage is an emotional roller coaster. Meghan dips her cookie into tea, without bothering to remove the tea bag because, of course, takes an earnest bite, and somewhere in the background, our little worm friend is sprinting for its life. This is not the behavior of a happy worm. This is the behavior of a creature that's just realized it's in a Meghan Markle cookie. Some viewers generously suggested this was just a little extra protein. Others weren't so forgiving, calling her dirty and disgusting, with a few wondering aloud about the state of her bathroom. Because if there's a worm in your cookie, what's lurking behind the scenes in the rest of the house? There are two possible origin stories for this guest appearance, and neither is particularly appetizing. 1. The worm came from the unwashed decorative flowers. 2. The worm came from the cookies themselves, which is somehow even worse. Either way, Meghan posted this willingly on her brand account. She either didn't notice, so much for the famous attention to detail, or noticed and thought, yeah, nature's quirky. My followers will love this. For the record, buzz at outdoor events are one thing, but this wasn't an impromptu picnic. This was content. Polished, staged, branded content meant to sell the as-ever vibe. Instead, it sold the idea that maybe eating from your own kitchen is the safer bet. Of course, Meghan's going to spin this. We can already hear the PR pitch. We embrace nature in all its forms. She'll talk about authenticity and organic living and how sometimes life is imperfect and that's beautiful. But here's the uncomfortable truth. When the worm would rather escape than eat your food, maybe it's time to reevaluate your recipe. But let's not get too bogged down in the details of pastry-based pest control. Let's talk about the why of all this. Why did the story, the single, blink and you miss it moment on Instagram, capture so much attention? Part of it is simple schadenfreude. There's something deeply satisfying about watching the ultra-curated world of celebrity lifestyle branding unravel in real time. Meghan, who has built an entire empire on the illusion of effortless perfection, was suddenly revealed to be, gasp, human. And not just human, but the kind of human who forgets to wash her edible flowers. There's another layer here, too. In a world where everything is filtered, staged, and meticulously planned, a rogue worm is the ultimate act of rebellion. That inchworm, in its desperate dash for freedom, became an unlikely symbol of authenticity. Forget the perfectly arranged cookies and the artfully placed mug. The real star was the little guy who refused to become garnish. Maybe that's why the story resonated. We're all a little tired of the endless parade of perfection on social media. The hashtag blessed brunches, the gleaming kitchens, the influencer-approved lighting. It's exhausting. So when something real, something messy, unplanned, and undeniably alive breaks through, people notice. The worm wasn't just an accident. It was a tiny, squirming reminder that reality, for all its grit and grime, is more interesting than any filter. Of course, the internet had a field day. Memes sprouted up overnight. The worm photoshopped onto red carpets, the worm with a tiny crown, the worm penning its memoirs. I survived Meghan Markle's kitchen, a true story. Some suggested he should be named, perhaps Winston or Archibald. Others wondered if he'd get his own Netflix deal. But as the laughter faded, a new conversation began. If the Duchess of Sussex, queen of curated content, can accidentally serve up an inchworm, what hope is there for the rest of us? Maybe, just maybe, we've all been trying a little too hard. Maybe it's time to accept that a little chaos is inevitable, and that sometimes the best laid plans go sideways. Sometimes the worm wins. So what happens now? Meghan's team will move on, of course. There will be new posts, new products, new attempts to recapture the magic. But the worm incident will linger, a tiny crack in the porcelain perfection. And that's probably a good thing. Because let's face it, the world doesn't need another recipe for jam-splattered shortbread. It needs more moments like this. More reminders that life is unpredictable, imperfect, and occasionally hilarious. More reasons to lower our standards, just a smidge, and enjoy the chaos. Maybe that's the real lesson here. Not that we should all start serving up insect-infused desserts, but that we should stop pretending we're living in a magazine spread. Maybe, instead of striving for unattainable perfection, we should all embrace our inner inchworm, scrappy, determined, and unafraid to make a run for it when things get weird. Of course, Meghan will keep curating her life, and people will keep watching, waiting for the next unfiltered moment to break through. And somewhere out there, Winston the Worm is living his best life, free from the tyranny of influencer content. So the next time you're scrolling through social media, feeling inadequate because your kitchen doesn't look like an anthropology catalog, remember the worm. Remember that behind every perfect photo, there's probably a disaster just out of frame. Maybe it's a worm. Maybe it's a sink full of dirty dishes. Maybe it's just the universal truth that nobody's life is as perfect as it looks online. In the end, Meghan's not the villain here. She's just another human, trying, and sometimes failing, to present her best self to the world. The real hero is the worm, the lone survivor who refused to be part of the charade. Wherever you are, inchworm, we salute you. You lived the dream. You saw the influencer content machine up close, and you made a run for it. And for the rest of us, maybe it's time to let a little more reality into our feeds. Maybe it's time to stop worrying about the perfect cookie and start celebrating the imperfect ones, the ones with burned edges, lopsided sprinkles, and the occasional unexpected guest. After all, that's where the stories are. That's where the laughter is. And, just maybe, that's where the real magic happens. So, here's to Meghan, her unintentional inchworm, and every one of us who's ever had a kitchen mishap. Here's to the messy, unpredictable, gloriously real side of life. Because in the end, it's not the picture-perfect cookies that we remember. It's the stories we tell about the ones that didn't go according to plan. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got some herbs to wash and a kitchen to debug, but I'll be keeping one eye out for Winston. After all, you never know when the next great escape is about to unfold.